Renato had it all squared away in his head. He would kill the Emperor. Isengrim III had begun well, but he had gone mad. He was trying to invoke the lost gods by means of dark, blasphemous rituals. That was a secret. But the victims had spoken to Renato. The ghosts had spoken. No. No anger. Renato could not afford anger. It was empowering the crystal in his sword. That made him stronger, but it clouded his mind. He would not be a hero. A hero strives. Renato would just be one with everything. The Emperor would die, and the wheel would turn, and all would be restored without rancor, without sorrow, without pain. Portal that led right into the middle of the fleet. It was a glaring weakness in the defense. Renato hoped his mother wasn't watching. That was always a rush. crying out your eyes. No skateboarding, the sign said. But the more he thought about it, and he had so much more time to think about it now that he was not worrying about the battle, killing the Emperor would not change anything. Another would take his place. Perhaps Zenobia. Perhaps the Speaker of the Rebel Council, and power would corrupt them too, and death would make grief, and grief would lead to hatred. He must lead by example. Reject the violence. Reject the desire to create violence. But how?
Interrupted story time. Can't believe Raven. Now I'll never find out how it ended.
Soon he'd confront the Emperor. Funny that this whole war had come about because the Emperor feared death. And now it was coming for him. There was some sort of lesson there, wasn't there? Finally, he came to the Emperor's ship. The path behind him was strewn with dead ravens. The path to enlightenment. His mistake, he realized, was trying to change the world. The world would spin and the wheel would revolve whether he strove against it or not. What he had to do was nothing. He had attained enlightenment. He sat down, adopted a full lotus position, and began to meditate. And all around him, the warriors stopped fighting too. They knew. They could feel his enlightenment. They gave up fighting, dropped their weapons, and became his disciples. No, just kidding. The nearest raven stabbed him with a sword and then chopped off his head. I might not have thought this through properly. Thought Renado's head as it rolled around the deck and died. And just like that, he was alive again, and back on the Farfarer, still fleeing burning Ubar. The book was still open before him. So, the book was a portal. It took you to the future when your destinies would branch. He had failed and died 3 times, but he'd learned another true thing. The Iblis Stone was evil. It would try to corrupt anyone who used it. But he was starting to feel like he was getting the hang of this. There was a way through to victory. He could feel it. He just had to keep running the path of destinies. With that, the book fluttered back to the beginning, and he fell into it. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renado knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong, but he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis Stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. On the other hand, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Lapino was no game changer, but could Renado really leave an old friend to the Ravens? Lapino. Apparently, the Mad Rabbit had sold a Pegasus that he did not exactly own. Lapino always wiggled out of trouble, given time. But he was out of time. The Ravens had figured out that Lapino was a rebel spy. If the fleet reached him first, they'd string him up for that. Never mind the winged horse.